The courthouse smelled like old wood and stale far. Eloise sat on the aired wooden bench outside the courtroom, her fingers wrapped so tightly around the strap of her handbag that her knuckles had turned a sickly shade of white. She had been sitting here for 3 hours, waiting for her name to be called. Waiting for the moment she had been dreading for the last 8 months. Waiting for the world to finally see the truth, or as she had grown to expect, to watch it look the other way. The hallway was empty now. The morning rush of lawyers and plaintiffs long since filtered into the various chambers. A janitor pushed a mop in lazy circles at the far end, his radio crackling with a Spanish station Eloise couldn't quite make out. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A low, relentless hum that seemed to burrow into her skull. She had been living with that hum for years, she realized. The hum of a life that was never quite quiet, never quite safe. She looked down at her hands. They were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs, trying to steady them, but the tremor was deep, lodged somewhere in her bones. She had worn her best dress today, a navy blue sheath she had bought on sale 2 years ago. It was the only thing in her closet that made her feel like a person, like someone who deserved to be taken seriously. She had paired it with low heels, because she didn't want to seem like she was trying too hard, and a single strand of parals that had belonged to her grandmother. She wanted to look like a woman who had been wronged, not a woman who was crumbling. But she was crumbling. She had been crumbling for years, piece by piece, until there was barely enough left to hold herself upright. The door to the courtroom swung open, and a bailiff stepped out. He was a large man with a face that seemed permanently set in a mask of mild boredom. He looked down at his clipboard, then at Eloise Vance. She stood up. Her legs felt like they were made of wet sand. Yes. Her voice came out smaller than she had intended. Judge wants to see you now. He's ready to hear your testimony. She nodded and followed him inside. The courtroom was smaller than she had imagined. She had seen trials on television, grand, cavernous spaces with towering ceilings and gilded wood. This was a cramped, utilitarian room with faded beige walls and a row of wooden pews that had been scratched and dented by decades of anxious hands. The gallery was half empty. A few reporters sat in the back, their faces glazed with the particular boredom of people who had covered too many domestic disputes. Her soon-to-be ex-husband Andrew was seated at the defense table, flanked by his lawyer, a silver-haired man named G.A. Risen who had the polished smile of a used car salesman. Andrew didn't look at her. He was staring straight ahead, his jaw set, his posture perfect. He was wearing a suit she had picked out for him 3 years ago, a Cheryl Grey Armani that cost more than her first car. He had always looked good in suits. He had always looked good, period. That was part of the problem. People saw Andrew Vance and they saw success. They saw a man who had built an empire from nothing, a philanthropist, a devoted husband, a father. They didn't see the monster who had locked her in the bathroom for 3 hours, because she had burned his dinner. They didn't see the man who had broken her wrist, and told the doctor she had tripped on the stairs. Eloise took her place on the witness stand. The chair was too small, the armrests digging into her hips. She placed her handbag on the floor beside her, and clasped her hands in her lap. She tried to breathe, in and out. The judge, an older man with thinning white hair and reading glasses perched on the tip of his nose, looked at her over his spectacles. Mrs. Vance, you are here today to testify in the matter of your divorce proceedings, and your petition for a restraining order against your husband, Mr. Andrew Vance. Yes, Your Honor, she said. Please state your full name and relationship to the defendant for the record. She spoke clay, forcing the words out like stones. Eloise Vance, I am the petitioner. Andrew Vance is my husband of 14 years. Andrew's lawyer stood up, smoothing the front of his jacket. Your Honor, before we proceed, I would like to remind the court that my client has denied all allegations of misconduct. We are here today because Vance has made a series of unsubstantiated claims that have caused significant damage to my client's reputation and business interests. We intend to demonstrate that these claims are not only false, but are part of a pattern of manipulative behavior designed to extract a more favorable settlement. Eloise felt the familiar heat rise in her chest. She had heard that word so many times now. Manipulative, it was his favorite accusation. The one he used to make her doubt herself. To make her feel like she was the one who was broken. She had spent years apologizing for things she hadn't done, for feelings she hadn't meant to have. She had apologized for crying. She had apologized for bleeding. She had apologized for existing in his space. for taking up air that he could have used. Eloise, a young woman named Petra with sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes, stood up. Your Honor, we have provided extensive documentation of the petitioner's injuries, including medical records, photographs, and the testimony of a licensed therapist. These are not unsubstantiated claims, they are evidence. The judge nodded slowly and adjusted his glasses. But Mrs. Vance, I want to be very clear with you. The burden of proof in this matter rests with you. You are asking this court to believe that your husband, a man with no criminal record, a man who has been a prominent member of this community for 2 decades, has been systematically abusing you for the duration of your marriage. That is an extraordinary claim, and it requires extraordinary evidence. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, she said. Her voice was steady, but her heart was pounding so loud she could hear it in her ears. Then let's begin, the judge said. Please tell the court in your own words what you believe constitutes the abuse you have suffered. Eloise closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about the first time it happened. They had been married for 2 years. And she had been pregnant with their first child. She had been sick, vomiting all night, and Andrew had come home to find the kitchen a mess. He had yelled at her for being lazy. She had tried to explain, but he hadn't wanted to hear it. He had pushed her against the refrigerator, hard enough to bruise her hip. He had apologized the next day. He had brought her flowers, told her he loved her, promised it would never happen again, and she had believed him. She had believed him every time, because she needed to. Because the alternative was to admit that she had married a monster, and that was a truth she simply couldn't bear. She opened her eyes, it stared with small things, she said, critical comments, name-calling. He would tell me I was stupid, that I was worthless, that no one else would ever want me. He would isolate me from my friends and family. He would control our finances, leaving me with no access to our joint accounts. He would monitor my phone and my emails. It was like a frog being boiled alive. You don't notice the water heating up until it's too late. The judge scribbled something on his notepad. And the physical abuse. She took a deep breath. The physical abuse started about 6 years ago. The first time. He hit me across the face because I had forgotten to pick up his dry cleaning. He said he was sorry. He bought me a bracelet to make up for it. But then it happened again, and again. He would pin me against walls, grab me by the throat, throw objects at me. I have a scar on my rib from when he threw a glass vase. I have a hairline fracture in my wrist that never healed properly. I have been to the emergency room 4 times in the last 3 years. Andrew's lawyer rose again. Objection, Your Honor. The petitioner is testifying to hearsay and unverified events. This is all highly prejudicial. The judge held up a hand. Overruled. She is testifying to her own experience. Continue, Mrs. Vance. Eloise looked at Andrew. He was still staring straight ahead, his expression blank. But she could see the tension in his shoulders. He was angry. She knew that look. It was the look he got before the storm broke, before the shouting started. She had seen it 1,000 times. I started documenting things about a year ago, she said, after he broke my wrist. I realized that no one was going to believe me unless I had proof. I took photographs of my injuries. I kept a journal. I started recording our conversations. Andrew's head snapped toward her. For the first time, his composure cracked. His eyes narrowed, and his face flushed a deep, ugly red. You what? The judge rapped his gavel. Mr. Vance, you will remain silent. Vance, you mentioned recordings. Do you have these recordings with you? Eloise reached into her handbag. Her fingers brushed against the cold metal of the small digital recorder she had kept hidden for months. She had been terrified every time she pressed the button. Terrified of what he would do if he ever found out. But she had needed the proof. She had needed to know that she wasn't crazy. That she wasn't making it up. Yes, she said. I have recordings of multiple incidents. Some of them are quite graphic. She pulled the recorder out and held it up. Andrew was staring at her now, his face a mask of contained rage. His lawyer was whispering furiously in his ear, but he wasn't listening. He was watching her with the eyes of a predator who had just realized his prey was armed. Your Honor, Andrew's lawyer said, we strenuously object. These recordings were made without my client's knowledge or consent. They are inadmissible. The judge leaned for Miss Resin. This is a civil proceeding. The rules of evidence are different here. If the recordings are relevant and authentic, I am inclined to admit them, Mrs. Vance. I would like to hear one of these recordings. Select one that you feel best illustrates your claims. Eloise's heart was pounding now, a frantic drumbeat in her chest. She scrolled through the files on the recorder, looking for the one that would make them all understand. She found it. It was from 4 months ago. The night he had accused her of cheating on him because she had come home 30 minutes late from a doctor's appointment. He had been drinking. He had been so angry that he had broken a chair against the wall. He had screamed at her for hours. She had sat on the floor of the living room, curled into a ball, and pressed the record button on her phone. She handed the recorder to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. The judge plugged a pair of headphones into the device and listened. His face remained impassive at first, but as the recording played, his expression shifted, his brow furrowed, his mouth tightened. He pulled the headphones off and looked at Andrew with an expression that made Eloise's breath catch. "Mr. Vance," the judge said, "I would like you to listen to this recording. Please come up to the bench." Andrew stood. His face was ashen. He walked to the bench, and the judge handed him the headphones. He listened. His face went from pale to gray. His hands were shaking. When he took the headphones off, he looked like a man who had just seen his own death. The judge leaned in and said something to Andrew that Eloise couldn't hear. Andrew nodded, his eyes fixed on the floor. Then the judge looked at Eloise. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Pity? Or regress? The judge said, "I have heard enough. I am granting your restraining order. I am also ordering Vance to surrender his passport and to pay all of your legal fees. I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges." There was a gasp from the gallery. Andrew's lawyer was on his feet, his face red, his voice rising in protest. But the judge raised his hand and silenced him with a single, commanding gesture. "The law is clear," the judge said. "We cannot turn a blind eye to abuse just because the abuser is wealthy or powerful. Mr. Vance, you are a danger to this woman. You have been for years, and I am ashamed, frankly, that it took a hidden recording for this court to see what you are. You have played this system for a fool, and you have gotten away with it because Mrs. Vance was too afraid to speak, but she has spoken now. And the record will show that she told the truth, and you lied." Andrew was staring at the judge now, his face a mask of disbelief. "You can't do this," he said. "I know people. I can get you disbarred. I can destroy you." The judge smiled. It was a cold, grim smile. "I'm sure you think you can, Mr. Vance. But I've been on this bench for 30 years. I've seen plenty of men like you. And I've seen what happens to them when they finally run out of people to bully. Now, bailiff, please." Vance from the courtroom. Eloise sat frozen in her seat. She had dreamed of this moment for so long, imagined it in 100 different ways, but now that it was happening, she couldn't quite process it. The bailiff was moving toward Andrew. Andrew was shouting now, his composure gone, his face twisted into something ugly and animalistic. He lunged to Eloise, but the bailiff grabbed him by the arm and pulled him back. "This isn't over," Andrew shouted. "You are me, Eloise. This is not over." But he was gone. The door slammed behind him, and the courtroom fell into a stunned silence. Eloise sat on the witness stand, her hands still trembling, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. She had done it. She had actually done it. But as the adrenaline began to fade, a new feeling crept into her chest, a cold, creeping dread. Because Andrew had never made a threat he didn't keep. She looked at the recorder in her hand. It had saved her today, but she knew, with a certainty that settled into her bones like frost, that this was just the beginning. Andrew had lost today, but he was not done fighting. And he was not above destroying anyone who got in his way. As she gathered her things and walked out of the courtroom, her lawyer, Petra, was waiting for her. "You did it," Petra said, her voice low. "You actually did it. I'm proud of you." But she couldn't bring herself to smile. She looked down the hallway, at the doors that led outside. The sun was shining, the world was moving on. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just opened a door she could never close. And on the other side of that door, something was waiting for her. Something DRK, something patient. Something that was already planning its next move. The courthouse steps felt like a mountain she had just climbed, only to realize there was an even taller one waiting on the other side. Eloise stood at the top, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the concrete. The air was crisp and clean, a stark contrast to the recycled oxygen of the courtroom. She inhaled deeply, filling her lungs, trying to purge the last traces of Andrew's scent from her memory. He had been so close to her when the bailiff dragged him out, close enough that she had caught the familiar mix of his expensive cologne and the sour undertone of his rage. She had breathed that air for 14 years. She never wanted to breathe it again. Petra came up beside her, her heels clicking against the stone. "Lois, are you okay? You look like you're going to be sick." Eloise shook her head, but the gesture felt hollow. "I don't know. I thought I would feel relieved. I've been waiting for this moment for so long, and now that it's here I just feel empty. I'm so scared, Petra. Petra put a hand on her arm. That's normal. You've been living in survival mode for years. Your body doesn't know what to do now that the danger isn't immediate. But it is immediate, Eloise. Andrew is dangerous. He made that perfectly clear today. I need you to understand that the restraining order is just a piece of paper. It won't stop him if he decides to come after you. Nodded. She had already thought of that. She had been thinking of little else for the past 8 months. I have a place to go, a friend from college, she lives 2 states away. She said I can stay with her as long as I need. I was going to leave tonight, before Andrew has a chance to, she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Before Andrew has a chance to do what? To find her, to hurt her, to silence her the way he had silenced her for so many years, Petra said. But I want you to take something with you. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a slim file folder. This is a copy of the evidence we presented today, the medical records, the photographs, the therapist's notes, and a digital copy of that recording. I know you have your own, but I want you to have backups, multiple backups. Andrew has resources. Eloise, he has lawyers, he has connections, he has money. If he tries to come after you legally, you're going to need every piece of ammunition you can get. Eloise took the folder and held it against her chest like a shield. Thank you for everything. I don't know how I would have gotten through this without you, Petra, but there was a sadness in her eyes. You would have found a way, you're stronger than you know. But Eloise, I have to ask you something. The recording you played today, was that the only one? The only one that was really damning? Eloise felt a cold prickle at the back of her neck. Why do you ask? Petra lowered her voice. Because Andrew's lawyer is going to fight this. He's going to try to discredit you. He's going to try to paint you as a bitter, vindictive wife who fabricated evidence to destroy her husband. He's going to challenge the authenticity of the recording. If there are others, if there is more, it might help to have them ready. Eloise thought about the other recordings. There were dozens of them. She had been so fearful, so terrified. She had recorded every fight, every threat, every moment when his mask slipped. Some of them were even worse than the one she had played today. There was the time he had broken her fingers because she had taken too long to bring him his drink. There was the time he had held a knife to her throat and whispered that he would kill her if she ever tried to leave. But she had never told anyone about those. She had been too ashamed, too terrified of what they would think of her for staying. I have others, she said quietly, but I'm not ready to share them, not yet. Petra nodded. That's your right, but if he escalates, and he will, you need to be prepared. You need to be willing to use everything you have. They walked down the steps together, and Eloise felt the weight of the folder in her arms. It was heavy, but it was also a kind of anchor, a reminder that she had proof, she had evidence, she was not crazy, and she was not alone. She got into her car and sat there for a long moment, her hands on the steering wheel, her eyes fixed on the courthouse in her rear-view mirror. It looked smaller from this angle. But she knew that what had happened inside those walls today would follow her for the rest of her life. She started the engine and drove. The drive to her friend's house was long. Hours. Eloise had planned to stop halfway, but she was too wired to rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Andrew's face, she heard his voice. The way he had screamed at her in the courtroom, "This is not over." It echoed in her skull like a curse. She thought about the life she was leaving behind, the house in the suburbs, the one with the white picket fence and the rose garden she had planted herself. It had been her dream home once, a symbol of everything she had hoped their marriage would be, but it had become a prison. Every room held a memory of pain. The kitchen, where he had pushed her into the counter so hard she had cracked a rib. The living room, where he had thrown a glass at her and she had spent hours picking the shards out of her hair. The bedroom, where he had forced her to perform acts that made her feel like less than human. She had never told anyone about those nights, not even Petra. She had been too ashamed, too afraid that if she spoke the words aloud, they would become real in a way she couldn't control. But now, in the quiet of the car, with the highway stretching out before her like an endless ribbon, she let herself remember. She let herself feel the rage that she had suppressed for so long. She had been so focused on surviving that she had forgotten how to be angry, but now the anger was there, burning in her chest like a coal. She had given Andrew everything, her youth, her ambition, her sanity. She had abandoned a promising career to support him. She had borne his children. 2 beautiful girls who were now the only things keeping her from completely falling apart. And he had repaid her by treating her like a possession, a thing he could use and discard. She thought about her daughters. They were with Andrew tonight, because the judge had refused to grant her full custody until a formal hearing could be arranged. That was the part of the ruling she hadn't fully processed. She had won the restraining order, she had won the legal fees, but she had not won her children, not yet. The idea of them being alone with him, even for a night, made her stomach twist. She pulled over at a rest stop and dialed the house phone. It rang and rang. She was about to hang up when a voice answered, but it wasn't Andrew, it was Lily, her 12-year-old. Lily's voice was small, fragile. Where are you? Dad said you left. He said you're not coming back. He said you don't love us anymore. Eloise felt her heart shatterly. Listen to me, that is not true. I love you more than anything in this world. I left because I had to. Your father is not a safe person to be around, and I needed to protect myself, but I will never stop loving you. Do you understand? I will never leave you. Why can't you come home? Lily's voice was trembling. Why can't we just be a family again? Eloise closed her eyes. She had to be serious now. She couldn't say anything that would make things worse for her daughters. It's complicated, sweetheart. But I promise you I am fighting for you. I am going to do everything I can to make sure you are safe. Can you put your sister on the phone? I need to hear her voice. There was a pause, and then a younger voice came on the line. Mummy? It was Chloe, just 8 years old. Mummy, I miss you. When are you coming home? Eloise bit her lip so hard she tasted blood. Very soon. I need you to be brave for me, okay? I need you to listen to your sister and stay safe. Can you do that for me? Try, Chloe said, but Daddy is really mad. He's been breaking things. He broke the picture frame in the hallway. The one with us all smiling. Eloise's blood ran cold. He was breaking things. That was always the precursor, the calm before the storm. She had seen it 100 times. He would break something. And then he would come after her. She had no idea what he would do to the children if she wasn't there to absorb the impact. Lily, she said, her voice sharp. Lily. I need you to take your sister and go to your room. Lock the door. Do not come out until I call you back. Do you understand? What? Why? Lily's voice was confused, but there was an edge of fear in it now. Just do it, Lily. Trust me. I will explain later, but right now, I need you to be safe. She heard the sound of a door slamming in the background, and then Lily's voice muffled. Okay, we're in the room. It's locked. Mom, what's going on? Eloise was already dialing Petra's number. I'm on my way to the police station, she said. I need you to meet me there. Andrew is threatening the children. She hung up before Petra could respond. The drive back was a blur. She broke every speed limit, her hands shaking on the wheel, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. She had left her children with a monster. And now that monster was turning on them. She couldn't let that happen. She wouldn't. She arrived at the police station in under 2 hours. Petra was already there, pacing the lobby. Her face was pale but her eyes were sharp. Eloise, you need to calm down. I've spoken to the police. They're sending a car to your house now. But you need to tell me what's happening. Eloise was shaking so hard she could barely form the words. He's breaking things. He's destroying the house. I heard it in the background. He was breaking things, Petra. He's never broken things when the kids were there. He always waited until they were asleep. But tonight, he doesn't see. He wants to hurt me. And he's going to use them to do it. Petra grabbed her by the shoulders. Eloise, listen to me. You cannot go back there. If you go back there, you are walking into a trap. He wants you to come back. He wants to punish you for what you did today. You need to let the police handle this. Eloise shook her head. I can't. I can't just wait here while he terrorizes my children. They are my babies, Petra. They are the only thing that matters to me. Petra's grip tightened. And if you go back, what happens to them? What happens to them if you get arrested? Or if he hurts you in front of them? You are not helping them by walking into a danger zone. You are helping them by being smart, by being strategic. Eloise wanted to but she knew Petra was right. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to think clearly. Petra released her and pulled out her phone. First we call the judge. We get an emergency custody order. We get those children out of that house tonight. And then we go after him with everything we have. Eloise watched as Petra made the call. Her voice was calm, professional, but underneath it, there was a fierce anger that Eloise had never heard before. When she hung up, she turned to Eloise with a grim smile. The judge is issuing an emergency order. The police will remove the children from the home and place them in temporary custody, until we can get a hearing. Andrew is going to be charged with child endangerment and domestic violence. And I'm going to make sure he never sees those children again. Eloise felt a wave of relief so intense that her knees buckled. She grabbed the edge of the counter to steady herself. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. Petra put a hand on her shoulder. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Andrew is not going to take this lying down. He's going to fight. And he's going to use every dirty trick he knows. But Eloise, we have the evidence. We have the truth. And the truth is a powerful thing. Eloise nodded. She felt stronger now, more focused. The fear was still there, gnawing at the edges of her mind. But underneath it, there was something new. Something that felt like steel. She thought about the recordings in her bag, the ones she hadn't read. The ones that would destroy Andrew completely if they ever saw the light of day. She had been holding back because she was ashamed. Because she didn't want the world to see the depths of her humiliation. But she was done being ashamed. She was done being silent. She looked at Petra. I have more recordings, she said. I have everything, the broken bones, the threats, the moments I thought I was going to die. I have it all. Petra stared at her. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you give me everything? Because I was scared, Eloise said, but I'm not scared anymore. If Andrew wants then he's going to get one. And I'm going to make sure he loses. She pulled out her phone and opened the folder where she had stored the recordings. She scrolled through them, her thumb hovering over the play button. There was one in PAR she was thinking of. The night he had held a knife to her throat. It was the worst of them all. It was the moment she had realized she was going to die if she didn't leave. She looked at Petra. This is the one they're going to hear. This is the one that's going to end him. She pressed play. The audio crackled through the phone speaker, filling the sterile police station lobby with a sound that made Eloise's stomach turn inside out. She had only listened to this recording once before, the morning after it happened, when she had sat in her car in a gas station parking lot and sobbed so hard she had nearly choked. She had made it to document the truth, but she had never intended to use it. She had buried it deep in her encrypted folder, alongside the photographs of her bruises, and the journal entries she had written in code. Convinced that if Andrew ever found out she had such damning evidence, he would kill her. But now she was done hiding. The recording began with the sound of a door slamming, then Andrew's voice, low and venomous. The tone he used when he had been drinking and the monster inside him was fully unleashed. You think you can just walk out on me? You think you have the right? Eloise's own voice followed, really audible, trembling with terror. Andrew, please. I just need some space. I need to think. Spaced. But there was nothing humorous about it. It was a cold mechanical sound, like the grinding of gears. You don't get space. You don't get anything. You belong to me. You have always belonged to me. And if I can't have you, no one can. There was a crash. The sound of something heavy hitting the wall. Eloise remembered that moment vividly. It was a lamp, her grandmother's lamp. The one she had brought with her from her childhood home. Andrew had picked it up and hurled it against the wall, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. She had watched the fragments scatter across the floor, and felt something inside her break along with it. Please, her recorded voice said, please, just let me go. Do you know what happens to women who leave? Andrew's voice was almost a whisper now, intimate and terrifying. They end up in ditches. They end up on the news, no one finds them, or if they do, they're not recognizable. Is that what you want, Eloise? Is that what you're asking for? I'm not leaving you, she said, the lie so desperate it was almost convincing. I'm just going to my sister's, just for a few days. Your sister doesn't want you, he snarled. No one wants you. You're nothing without me, a 40-year-old woman with no skills, no job, no friends. Who would take you? Who would even look at you? You're lucky I still find you useful. You're lucky I haven't thrown you out on the street where you belong. There was a silence. And then a sound that made everyone in the police station lobby freeze. The unmistakable metallic click of a knife being opened. Eloise remembered this period in excruciating detail. He had pulled the knife from the block on the counter, a long chef's blade that she used to chop vegetables for their dinners. He had held it up to the light, letting it glint, letting her see it. Look at me, he had said, and in the recording, his voice was calm now, which was somehow worse than the shouting. Look me in the eyes when I talk to you. I'm looking, her recorded voice said, so small, so broken. Do you know what it feels like to have a knife slide into your chest? He was closer now. The sound of his footsteps echoing on the tile floor. It's cold at first, and then it's hot. It's like a fire. It burns and burns until there's nothing left. I wonder how long you would scream. How long before you'd go quiet? Would you beg? You always beg, don't you? That's the Pierre I hate the most. The begging. You make yourself so pathetic. And then you expect me to feel sorry for you. The recording cut out. Eloise had stopped it there, unable to listen any further. But the silence that followed in the police station lobby was more damning than any of the words. Petra read at her face a pale mask. She said slowly. He held a knife to your throat. Eloise nodded, a single jerky movement. He didn't cut me, not that night. He just held it there. He pressed it against my neck, just hard enough to break the skin. I had a tiny scratch, be really visible. He said if I ever tried to leave again, he would find me and make sure I couldn't walk out on him ever again. He said he would kill me and make it look like an accident. He was very specific. He had thought it all through. The police officers who had been lingering in the lobby were now gathered around her, their faces grim. One of them, a tall woman with graying hair and tired eyes, stepped forward. Mrs. Vance, I'm Officer Chen, she said. I've been assigned to your case. I need to ask you a few questions, but first, I need to tell you that we've already dispatched a unit to your home. The children are being removed as we speak. They're going to be brought here. And then we'll arrange for them to be placed in protective custody. You won't be allowed to see them tonight, but you'll be able to see them tomorrow, assuming the emergency custody order goes through. Eloise felt a wave of relief so powerful she nearly collapsed. Thank you, she said. Thank you for getting them out. Officer Chen nodded. It's my job. But I need to be honest with you, Mrs. Vance. This recording is the most disturbing thing I've heard in a long time. And I've heard a lot of things. This man is not just dangerous, he's sadistic, he's a predator, and he's going to be very angry that you've exposed him. Eloise had already thought of that. He threatened me in court today, in front of the judge. He said it wasn't over. I don't think he's going to stop just because the police are involved. I think he's going to escalate. We're going to do everything we can to protect you, Officer Chen said. But you need to understand something. A restraining order is just a piece of paper. A police presence is just a deterrent. If Andrew Vance is as determined as you say he is, he's going to find a way to get to you. You need to be prepared for that. Eloise looked at the phone in her hand. The recording still paused on the screen. I've been prepared for years, she said. I just didn't know it until now. The next few hours were a blur. Eloise was interviewed by 3 different officers, each of them asking the same questions in slightly different ways. She told them about the years of abuse, the isolation, the financial control. She told them about the broken bones and the shattered lamps, and the nights she had spent locked in the bathroom, wondering if she was going to die. She gave them copies of all the recordings, all the photographs, all the journal entries. She held nothing back. Petra stayed by her side the entire time, her presence a steady, calming force. When the interviews were finally over, she pulled Eloise aside. You did the right thing, Petra said. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you did. You just gave the police everything they need to arrest him. He's not going to be able to talk his way out of this, not with that recording, not with everything else. Eloise shook her head. He's going to fight this. He has money, he has lawyers, he has connections. He also has a history of domestic violence, a documented threat to kill you, and a pile of evidence that would make a jury sick to their stomachs. Petra said. Money can't buy his way out of this, Eloise, not this time. Eloise wanted to believe her, but she had learned, over the course of her marriage, that the world was not always fair. The rich and powerful often got away with things that would destroy ordinary people. She had seen it happen to other women. Women who had been brave enough to speak up, and had been crushed by the system. But she wasn't going to let that happen to her. She was done being a victim. At 2 in the morning, Officer Chen came back to the lobby. Her face was tired, but there was a look of grim satisfaction in her eyes. We picked him up, she said. He was at the house when we arrived. He resisted arrest. He threatened the officers. We had to use force to subdue him. He's in a holding cell now, and he's going to be charged with assault, making terroristic threats, and resisting arrest. The DA's office is going to review the rest of the evidence and add more charges. Eloise felt a sob rise in her throat. She fought it back, forcing herself to stay composed. What about my daughters? Are they okay? They're fine, Officer Chen said. They were frightened, but they weren't armed. We've got them in a safe house. They'll be taken care of until you can get custody. But Mrs. Vance, I need to arraign you. Your husband is going to be arraigned in the morning. He's going to have a bail hearing, and given his resources, He's probably going to be released. He might even make bail tonight. Eloise's blood ran cold. You're telling me he could walk free? It's not up to me, Officer Chen said. The judge has to decide, but if I were you, I wouldn't stay in this city. I'd get as far away as I could, as soon as possible. Eloise looked at Petra. Where can I go? I have a friend, but she's 6 hours away. And I can't leave the kids. We'll figure it out, Petra said. We'll get you and the kids to a safe location. But we have to do it tonight. Andrew is going to be out of that cell in a matter of hours, and when he gets out, he's going to be looking for you. Eloise stood up, her legs shaky but her resolve firm. I'm not running, she said. I've been running my whole life. I've been running from the truth, from the fear, from the shame. I'm done. If Andrew wants to come after me, he can. I'll be waiting and I'll be ready. Eloise, you can't be serious. He's dangerous. He's already tried to kill you once. He'll try again, Eloise said. I know that, but I've been hiding from him for years. And look where it got me. Broken bones. Shattered hope. I'm done hiding. If I walk away now he wins. He gets to control me one more time. He gets to make me a victim again. And I refuse to give him that satisfaction. Officer Chen stepped forward. Mrs. Vance, I admire your courage, but I have to advise you against this. If he comes after you, there's no guarantee we'll be able to stop him in time. Eloise turned to face her. I have the recordings. I have the evidence. I have the truth. And I'm not afraid to use any of it. If Andrew comes near, I'll make sure the whole world knows exactly what he did. I'll make sure he can't hide behind his money or his connections. I'll destroy him. She didn't say it with anger. She said it with the quiet, absolute certainty of a woman who had nothing left to lose. Officer Chen was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, Mrs. Vance, if you're sure, I'll help you prepare. But you need to understand the risks. I understand them, Eloise said, better than anyone. She walked out of the police station into the cold night air. The stars were out, bright and indifferent. The city was quiet, the streets empty. She took a deep breath and let it fill her lungs. She was not afraid anymore. She was not running anymore. She was ready. The morning sun crept through the grimy windows of the police station waiting room, casting pale stripes across the linoleum floor. Eloise hadn't slept. She had spent the night in a stiff plastic chair, her eyes fixed on the door, her phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. Petra had gone home to gather supplies. But she had promised to return before the arraignment. The arraignment. That was the word that kept circling in Eloise's mind like a vulture. The moment when Andrew would stand before a judge and be formally charged. The moment when she would have to look him in the eye again. She had been through so much already, but the thought of seeing him, of being in the same room with him, made her stomach churn with a sick ache. She had spent years perfecting the art of hiding her fear from him, of keeping her face neutral even when her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. But this time would be different. This time, she wasn't gonna hide. This time, she was going to let him see exactly what he had made her. The door opened, and Petra walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a paper bag that smelled like stale pastries. She set them down on the table beside Eloise and sat across from her. You look terrible, Petra said, but there was no judgment in her voice, just concern. I feel terrible, Eloise admitted. I keep thinking about what he's going to do when he sees me. He's going to be so angry. He's never been this exposed before. He's never been publicly humiliated. I don't know what he's capable of when he's cornered. Petra leaned forward, her sharp eyes locking onto Eloise's. That's exactly why you need to stay strong. He's going to try to intimidate you. He's going to try to make you feel small. That's what he's always done. But you're not small anymore, Eloise. You have the evidence. You have the truth, and you have me. I'm not going to let him win. Eloise wanted to believe that. She had wanted to believe a lot of things over the years. But this time, something felt different. This time she had proof. She had recordings, photographs, medical records. She had a paper trail that stretched back years, documenting every bruise, every broken bone, every whispered threat. She had built a fortress out of her own pain, and she was finally ready to defend it. The arraignment was scheduled for 9 o'clock. Eloise and Petra arrived at the courthouse Raleigh, slipping into the gallery before the room began to fill. The reporters were already there, their notebooks open, their cameras poised. Eloise recognized a few of them from the day before, their faces a mixture of boredom and anticipation. They were waiting for a story, and she was about to hand it to them on a silver platter. Andrew was brought in at exactly 9. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him, his hair disheveled. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. His lawyer Garrison walked beside him, his face a mask of practiced calm. Andrew scanned the room, his eyes moving over the reporters, the officers, the judge, and then they landed on Eloise. For a moment he didn't react, his face was blank, unreadable, and then, slowly, a smile spread across his lip. It was a smile Eloise knew well. It was the smile he wore when he was planning something, when he was about to destroy someone. She held his gaze, she didn't look away. She had looked away 1,000 times before, had dropped her eyes to the floor like a chastised child, but this time, she stared straight back at him. She let him see the anger in her eyes, the fury that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. He was a different judge than the one from the day before, a younger man with a stern face and a no-nonsense demeanor. He sat down, adjusted his robes, and looked at the papers in front of him. This is the case of the state versus Andrew Vance, he said. You are charged with domestic violence, making terroristic threats, resisting, and assault on a law enforcement officer. How do you plead? Garrison stood up, his voice smooth and practiced. Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty to all charges. I would like to point out that the evidence against him is largely circumstantial, and has been provided by a bitter, vindictive wife who is seeking to destroy my client's reputation in order to secure a favorable divorce settlement. Eloise felt the familiar heat rise in her chest. There it was, the word she had been dreading. It was the same word he had used for years to gaslight her, to make her doubt her own reality. But this time, she was ready. Honor, Petra said, rising from her seat. I object to the defense counsel's characterization of my client. Mrs. Vance is not vindictive. She is a survivor, and we have extensive evidence to support her claims, including audio recordings that clearly depict the defendant threatening to kill her with a knife. I have submitted these recordings to the court this morning. The judge's eyes flickered to Eloise, then back to Garrison. Is this true? Have you listened to the recordings? Garrison's composure faltered for just a fraction of a second. Your Honor, I have reviewed the recordings, and I believe they are highly prejudicial. They were made without my client's knowledge or consent. They are not admissible in a criminal proceeding. The judge frowned. This is an arraignment, not. I am not deciding on admissibility at this moment. But I have listened to the recordings, and I find them troubling, Mr. Vance. Given the nature of the allegations against you, and the severity of the evidence presented, I am inclined to deny bail. Andrew's face went pale. Your Honor, please, he said, his voice cracking. I have a family, I have children, I am not a flight risk. I have lived in this community for 20 years. I am aware of that, Vance, the judge said. But, you have also been accused of threatening to kill your wife, and of assaulting law enforcement officers. These are serious charges. I am not willing to release you back into the community at this time. Eloise felt a wave of relief wash over her. He was going to stay in jail, at least for now. She watched as Andrew was led away by the bailiffs, his face twisted into a mask of rage. He didn't look at her again, he didn't dare, but she felt his hatred radiating off him like heat from a furnace. As the courtroom emptied, Petra turned to Eloise. That went about as well as we could have hoped, she said. He's in custody, at least for now. That gives us time to prepare for the trial. Eloise nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about what would happen when Andrew was released. Because he would be released eventually. He had money, he had influence. And he had a long history of getting what he wanted. What do I do now? Eloise asked. I can't just sit here and wait for him to come after me. Petra's face was thoughtful. You need to disappear for a while. I know you said you don't want to run. But running is not the same as being strategic. You need to be somewhere he can't find you, somewhere he can't hurt you. And you need to take the kids with you. Eloise hesitated. She had thought about it, about disappearing into a new life, a new idea, but she had built a life here, even if it had been a prison. She had friends, or at least she had had friends once. She had memories, both good and bad. Leaving it all behind felt like giving up. But Petra was right. Andrew wasn't just a threat, he was a predator. And predators never stopped hunting. I need to see my daughters, Eloise said. I need to tell them what's happening. They need to hear it from me. Petra nodded. I'll make the arrangements. You can see them this afternoon, but Eloise, you need to prepare yourself. They've been through a lot, they're scared. They might not understand why you left. Eloise felt a tear slide down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly. I know. But I'm going to make them understand. I'm going to tell them the truth. All of it. The meeting with her daughters was held in a sterile visitation room at the Child Protective Services office. Lily and Chloe were waiting for her, their faces pale and drawn. Lily's eyes were red from crying, and Chloe was clutching a stuffed rabbit so tightly its ears were twisted. Eloise rushed to them, wrapping her arms around both of them at once. They clung to her, their small bodies trembling with sobs. "Mummy, I was so scared," Chloe whispered. "Daddy broke everything. He broke the TV and the pictures and everything." "I know, baby," Eloise said, her voice choked with tears. "I know, but I'm going to keep you safe. I promise. No one is ever going to hurt you again." Lily pulled, her face streaked with tears and anger. "Why did you leave us?" she demanded. "Why did you leave us with him? You knew what he was like, you knew he was dangerous, and you just left." Eloise felt the accusation hit her like a physical blow, but she didn't flinch. She had expected this. She had been preparing for it. "Lily," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "I didn't leave you, I left him, I had to. He was hurting me. He was hurting me for a very long time, and I was so scared that if I stayed, he would end up hurting you too. That's the one thing I couldn't let happen. I left so I could protect you." Lily's face crumpled. "But he hurt us anyway. He broke things, he yelled at us. He said you were gone forever, and we would never see you again." Eloise pulled her daughter close again. "And I am so sorry. I should have taken you with me. I should have fought a rotter, but I'm fighting now. I'm fighting with everything I have, and I am ever going to leave you again." They stayed like that for a long time, huddled together in the small room, the minutes ticking by in silence. Eloise held her daughters and wept. She wept for all the years she had wasted, all the pain she had endured, all the moments she had missed, but she also wept with relief. Relief that they were safe, relief that she was finally free. When it was time to leave, Chloe clung to her leg. "Don't go, Mommy, please don't go." Eloise knelt down and looked her daughter in the eyes. "I have to go, baby, but I'm coming back. I'm going to get you a safe place to live. And we're going to be together again. I promise. Do you trust me?" Chloe nodded slowly, her lower lip trembling. "I trust you, Mommy." Eloise kissed her forehead and stood up. She looked at Lily, who was watching her with a mix of skepticism and longing. "I'll be back for you," she said. "I'll never stop fighting for you. That's a promise I intend to keep." As she walked out of the visitation room, her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. She opened it, and her blood ran cold. "You think you've won. You think you've beaten me. But you haven't. This isn't over, it will never be over. I will find you, Eloise. I will find you and I will make you pay. Watch your back." Eloise stared at the screen. Her hands were shaking, but her mind was clear. He was already out, or he had made arrangements from inside. It didn't matter. He had found a way to reach her, and he was coming. She looked at Petra, her face pale but resolute. "He texted me. He said he's going to find me." Petra's face da. "How did he get a phone?" "I don't know, but it doesn't matter. He's going to come after me. And I need to be ready." She looked down at her phone, at the message, at the threat that was both terrifying and liberating. Because for the first time in her life, she was not going to run. She was going to stand her ground. And she was going to win. The television studio smelled like ozone and anxiety. Eloise sat in the makeup chair, staring at her reflection in the ring of lights that surrounded the mirror. The makeup, a young woman with pastel hair and a gentle touch, was dabbing concealer under her eyes, trying to hide the dark circles that had become permanent fixtures on her face over the past week. But no amount of makeup could hide the new light in Eloise's eyes. It was a sharp, cold light. The kind that came from surviving something that should have destroyed you. She had been called a lot of things in the days since Andrew's arrest: brainless, dangerous, reckless. The tabloids had eaten up the story of the wealthy businessman and his allegedly abused wife, and the public had divided into two camps. Those who believed her and those who believed he was the victim of a gold-digging conspiracy. The online comments were a cesspool of misogyny and doubt, but Eloise had stopped reading them. She had stopped caring about what strangers thought of her, because she knew the truth, and soon, the whole world would know it too. Petra had arranged the interview. It was a live broadcast on a major cable news network, one of those prime time shows that thrived on scandal and sensationalism. The host, a woman named Diane Mercer with razor-sharp cheekbones and a reputation for asking the uncomfortable questions, had been skeptical at first. But when Petra had sent her the full recording of Andrew's knife threat, Diane had called back within the hour. "We need to think about this carefully," Petra had said. "Once you go on that show, there's no taking it back. You're going to be public enemy number one in some circles. Andrew's supporters are going to come after you. I know, but if I don't do this, the only story people will hear is his. He's already planting seeds." He's already telling anyone who will listen that I fabricated the evidence, that I'm a liar, that I'm trying to destroy him. I have to tell my side. I have to let them hear the truth. And so she was here, in the green room of a television studio, preparing to betray her soul to millions of strangers. Her hands were trembling, but her voice was steady. Ready, the makeup artist asked, stepping back to admire her work. Eloise looked at herself in the mirror. She looked strong, she realized. She looked like a woman who had been through hell, and come out the other side. Her hair was sleek. Her dress was a bold crimson that made her look powerful and unapologetic. She had chosen it deliberately. She was done being invisible. She was done fading into the background. Ready, she said. The studio was a hive of controlled chaos. Cameras swiveled on their mounts. Producers shouted into headsets, and a stage manager with a clipboard and a wide expression guided Eloise to her seat. The set was sleek and modern, all glass and steel, with a large screen behind the host's desk that would display photographs and video clips during the interview. Diane Mercer was already seated, her smile professional and her eyes sharp. She greeted Eloise with a firm handshake and a murmured pleasantry, and then the countdown began. 10 seconds, the stage manager said. 5, 4, 3. The red light on the camera blinked on. Good evening, and welcome to The Truth Tonight, Diane said, her voice smooth and authoritative. Tonight, we have a story that has gripped the nation. Eloise, the woman at the center of a high-profile domestic abuse case, is here to share her story for the first time. Mrs. Vance, thank you for joining us. Eloise smiled, controlled expression. Thank you for having me, Diane. Diane leaned forward, her eyes fixed on Eloise's. Let's start with the obvious question. You've accused your husband, Andrew Vance, of years of physical and emotional abuse. He's currently in custody awaiting trial. But many people have questioned your motives. They say you're trying to destroy him for financial gain. What do you say to them? Eloise took a breath. She had expected this question. She had rehearsed her answer 100 times. But now that she was here, in the bright lights, with the cameras rolling, the words felt different, heavier. I say that no amount of money is worth what I went through, she said. I say that I spent 14 years of my life being broken down, piece by piece, until I didn't recognize myself anymore. I say that I have medical records and audio recordings that document every single moment of that abuse. And I say that I am not doing this for money. I am doing this so that no other woman has to go through what I went through. Her expression ruefully neutral. You mentioned audio recordings. We've been given permission to play a portion of one of those recordings tonight. Are you comfortable with that? Eloise's heart began to pound. This was the moment she had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. She had listened to those recordings so many times that they were burned into her memory. But hearing them played on national television was something else entirely. Yes, she said, I'm ready. The screen behind them flickered to life, and the audio began to play. The sound of Andrew's voice filled the studio. Cole. The moment he threatened her with the knife. The moment he told her he would kill her and make it look like an accident. The moment her life had narrowly ended. In the studio, the silence was absolute. The production crew had stopped moving. The cameras were fixed on Eloise's face, capturing every micro-expression. She kept her composure, but inside, she was reliving that night all over again. The terror, the helplessness, the certainty that she was going to die. When the recording ended, Diane's face was pale. She took a moment to compose herself before speaking. Mrs. Vance, she said, her voice softer now, that is horrifying. I can't imagine what you must have gone through. Eloise shook her head. You can't, unless you've lived it, and that's the problem, Diane. People don't understand what it's like to be trapped in a situation like that. They think it's easy to leave. They think it's simple, but it's not. Because the person who is supposed to love you, the person who promised to cherish and protect you, is the same person who is systematically destroying you. And they make you believe that you deserve it. They make you believe that you are worthless, that no one else would ever want you, that you are nothing without them. Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. I stayed for 14 years because I believed him. I believed that I was the problem. That if I could just be better, quieter, more obedient, he would stop hurting me. But it never stopped, it only got worse. And the day I finally left, the day I walked out of that house, was the hardest day of my life. Because I knew he would come after me. And I knew I would never be truly safe. Diane leaned forward, her expression intense. And yet you're here tonight, talking to millions of people. Why not disappear? Why not protect yourself? Eloise looked directly into the camera. Because I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of letting him control my life, even when I'm not with him. If I disappear he wins, if I stay silent he wins. And I refuse to let him win anymore. The interview continued for another 15 minutes. Eloise answered every question with a calm, measured voice. Even when Diane pressed her on the more painful details, she talked about the broken bones, the shattered lamps, the nights she had spent in the bathroom, sobbing into a towel so the children wouldn't hear. She talked about the isolation, the financial control, the way he had systematically stripped away every part of her identity, until she was a ghost in her own life. And then at the very end, Diane asked the question Eloise had been waiting for. What do you want to say to your husband, Mrs.? What do you want to say to the man who did this to you? Eloise was silent for a moment. She thought about everything Andrew had taken from her, her youth, her ambition, her innocence. But she also thought about what he had given her, the strength she never knew she had, the courage to fight back, the determination to rebuild her life from the ashes. I want to say thank you, she said. Diane blinked, clearly taken aback. Eloise nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Yes, thank you for showing me who you really are. Thank you for giving me the clarity to leave. Thank you for making me strong enough to stand here today and tell the truth, because without you, I never would have found myself. I never would have realized that I am so much more than the woman you tried to break. She leaned forward, her eyes blazing. And I want to say this, Andrew, I know you're watching. I know you're listening. And I want you to know that I am not afraid of you anymore. You took everything from me, but you couldn't take my voice, you couldn't take my courage, and you couldn't take my power. I have it all back now. And I'm going to use it to make sure that no woman ever has to suffer the way I did. The studio erupted into a flurry of activity. The producers were signaling, the cameras were shifting, and Diane was smiling, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. That's all the time we have for tonight, Diane said. Eloise Vance, thank you for being so brave. Thank you for sharing your story. I think I speak for everyone watching when I say that we are rooting for you. Eloise stood up, her legs shaky but her heart full. She had done it. She had told her story to the world, and the world was listening. As she walked off the set, Petra was waiting for her, her face a mixture of pride and relief. You did it, she said. That was incredible. Eloise shook her head. I just told the truth. It's not that hard when you've been holding it in for so long. Outside the night air was cold and crisp. Eloise stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the sky. They seemed brighter somehow, closer. She thought about her daughters, safe in their temporary home. She thought about the future, uncertain but full of possibility. She thought about the life she was going to build, a life on her own terms. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her grandmother's pearl necklace, the one she had worn to the courthouse. She had taken it off before the interview, afraid that it might break if she fidgeted with it. She held it up to the light, letting it catch the glow of the street lamps. Her grandmother had given it to her on her wedding day. It had been a symbol of love, of family. For 14 years, Eloise had worn it as a reminder of the life she thought she was building, but now it was something else. It was a reminder of how far she had come, of how strong she was, of the woman she had become. She put the necklace back in her pocket and walked away from the studio. Behind her, the city hummed with life, indifferent and eternal. But Eloise didn't feel indifferent. She felt alive, she felt free. She felt like she could breathe for the first time in 14 years. And as she walked into the night she smiled. Because she knew that whatever came next, she was ready for it. She had survived the worst. She had faced the monster and won, and now, she was going to live.